My friends, welcome to another episode of Diner Talks with James. I'm James, and I'm super pumped to be here with you all today. My friends, I ate at a diner the other day that was so damn good. It's called Al's Breakfast, and it passed my test where the best diners all close around the hours of 2 in the afternoon, maybe 3 o'clock if they're feeling fancy. But this place was incredible. You had to wait outside because it was so small and also COVID. But they only had like maybe 12 stools, and it was just incredible. Everything was homemade. Some of the best pancakes I had in my life. Great syrup. I'm telling you, y'all, I think we got to get Diner Talks filming in there. So we got to figure out how to get Al's Breakfast to let me in there and do some filming. But either way, my friends, either way, that's besides the point. Hope you've eaten some good food. It is the holidays after all. At least that's when I'm recording this, and it'll come out shortly thereafter. But I hope you all did well and got surrounded by loved ones, and maybe you got some cool things in your stockings or in your whatever your gifts come in. Okay, let's keep it moving now before I say something wrong. Y'all, I'm pumped to have my guest on today. I asked her a very long time ago, and she was like, nah, I don't do that. I'm bigger than that. But finally got her on. Becky and I met each other on Clubhouse a number of years ago. And by years ago, I mean 1 year ago, almost to the day, probably right around 1 year ago, we met. And she's one of the funniest people that I got to meet on Clubhouse. And since then, I've just enjoyed getting to learn the way her brain works. We have very dry senses of humor, which work great during inappropriate times. And I'm just excited for you to hear her and her absolutely ridiculous stories. Let me tell you a little bit about Becky Schmooke. The year was 1987, the month January, and as the sun rose on the final day of the first week of the new year, a blessed baby. All right, I'm going to skip over that part of the bio here. Way to write that, though, Becky. Becky is the founder, owner, and goat wrangler and dishwasher of Becky's Mindful Kitchen, a cooking school in the Midwest, home to summer camps, retreats, workshops, and most importantly, bachelorette parties. But after 10 years of studying mindfulness, leadership, and Stoic philosophy, we will come back to that. She now focuses on mindful leadership consulting and speaking. But fear not, she still does live on the land and can split her own wood, uses a chainsaw regularly, teaches archery and fire starting. She makes soaps and candles and skincare products to gift to people. Basically, if her eyes are open, her hands are busy, is Becky's philosophy. She's got 2 great daughters and a bonus daughter at that. She's married and a type 1 diabetic who's almost died a few times. Casual. Well, let's bring her out now as long as she's alive. Coming to the table right now at Diner Talks. Shout out to Becky Schmooke.
Hey, you know what? I should have realized that you were going to read what I actually wrote. That last little bit, I was like, I don't want to do full sentences anymore. And that's why I just was like, random facts. Oh, funny.
It's okay. I'm capable of adding I can't think of any sentence structure words right now, but you know what I mean.
Conjugation.
Sure, there it is. Yeah, let's call it that.
Yeah.
Becky, how are you today, friend?
I am good. As we mentioned earlier in our chit chat, it is snowing, so it finally feels like winter. It's just a few days too late for Christmas.
I think that makes this a good snowman for our talk today.
Well done. Yep. This is a winner already. Thank God you don't edit.
Exactly. Not a bit. Becky, this show is called Diner Talks with James. And one thing that I know you know, because you are one of the few people I know that listens to it, is that, you know, I love to start these shows off by hearing people's late night eating guilty pleasures. So I'm curious for you, as someone who has very capable culinary skills, you're probably not going out somewhere, but are you whipping something up? Is there something that you like to eat late at night? You know, I talk to a lot of chefs, and like their guilty pleasure late at night is like Chinese food or something like that. But what are you doing later in the evening?
Okay, so I live in the country, so there's no like late night going anywhere, right? Because that would involve a lot of effort. However, I'm a cold cuts gal. So like last night it was pulling out some salami, some prosciutto, and cheese. So like meat and cheese. And then to be honest, I eat a bag of popcorn every night. I can't go to bed, in bed, a bag of popcorn. And I make sure to leave extra like kernels and stuff on my husband's side of the bed because I feel like he loves it. He says he hates it, But I think he actually enjoys like rolling over and feeling that popcorn. It makes him feel extra alive. So that's my thing. It's a really weird habit. Entire bag of popcorn every night. Good fiber.
Entire bag. Like, are you talking like one of like the small little ones, or are you like going to town on like some big old honking bag of popcorn?
No, I get the Paul Newman microwave popcorn.
Perfect.
And so that way, like, part of it goes to charity. So I'm doing a good deed every night. And it's like, that's how I,
Yeah.
no, I don't get the individual ones because, like, that's not enough. But I make sure to always have it not completely popped. Like, there's always enough kernels at the bottom. So that way, it's like, I didn't eat the whole bag. Like,
yeah, you can mess with your husband too. Yeah, that's great.
Yep.
Yeah, I usually get the Randy Newman popcorn that sings to me, and I appreciate that.
That would be really clever. As it pops, it's like it sings a song.
Yeah.
A very sad song.
Or if it was like the Seinfeld Newman. So each pop, instead of a popping, goes Newman. Anyway, we could run with our Newmans for a while.
We could just do this. Yeah, that sounds good. I feel like that's what people want.
Mm-hmm. I had some popcorn. I enjoy popcorn at movie theaters and other locations as well. But my favorite thing about eating popcorn at the movie theater is at the end of the movie when the lights come on and I'm just covered in it and I get another snack. I'm like, ooh, and I get to eat it off of my belly. So
I know there is a lot of cleavage popcorn that's eaten throughout the times. And like, especially when I love making caramel corn. So I make my own cheese. Like I do my own Chicago mix a lot.
Oh yeah,
so
sure.
Yeah, that's my thing.
Yeah. I'm not, it's funny. I love cheese in pretty much every form except in like powdered form. So I don't love like cheese popcorn or and some of those kinds of things. It's a weird time where I'm like, no, I can't do it.
Even like, what about macaroni and cheese? Like you never do like boxed mac and cheese?
Yeah, I think the Velveeta is better than Blue Box.
Wow,
that's right.
This is really wow. Okay, that's interesting. Fascinating. Yeah, I can't say like I eat it from the bag, or like shake it into my mouth, but I do enjoy it on some popcorn. So
that's fair. Yeah, Tina. Yeah, it's great because when we do get the Chicago mix, Tina doesn't love the caramel corn as much, and so she eats the cheese popcorn, and I eat the caramel.
Well, you guys are a match made in heaven.
I know, right? We're
that
so
is like the classic.
cute.
It's like, oh, I don't like olives, and then you find out, like, oh, I've actually always have like, that whole thing. You're gonna find out that she absolutely loves caramel corn, but she's been letting you have it all these years.
I wouldn't doubt it because we're both giant accommodators. So she definitely is Minnesota nice. So yeah, unless you cross her the wrong way, in which case she's New Jersey sassy. But
well, I was hoping you were going to ask me about diners because my favorite diner memories are in Minnesota.
Oh, really? Tell me about
that's
one.
The only time because I used to go because I have family like in Minnesota, and so like every winter, I'm not an idiot. Summer, my grandmother would drive with us and my grandpa. They would drive from California. We'd drive up to Minnesota and stay in a cabin. And we would always stop by the diners. And so like mine was like the biscuits and gravy, like sausage and gravy. That was the only time I got it was like those summers. Then my grandpa died of lung cancer and then never again. So that's how that ended.
There we go.
What
a delightful left turn.
I like to do that for you.
Haven't eaten at a diner since.
Nope.
Shoot.
No,
that's great.
Yep, there you go.
And rest in peace to Grandpa too.
Yeah, he's a good one. Good egg.
I believe it. So now, where were you born and raised? You currently live in the metropolis of Iowa, but you're not born Iowan, correct?
No. If I was, then it'd be very strange in my bio the fact that I was born overlooking the Pacific Ocean. And then like, it's a very high building. I was born in San Diego. And then my parents moved to Iowa when I was like 2 years old. And so my dad works in the university here, just like everyone else. And so, I grew up in Iowa City, and then just like sea turtles do, I went back to the same part of San Diego. After I graduated college, I had my first child there and then moved back to Iowa. And so I've let her know that she needs to do the same thing, that like she has to go to San Diego, like get knocked up, birth there, and then come back to Iowa. It's what we do. That's our tradition, family tradition.
Use tradition.
Yeah, exactly. But it's nice here. I'm glad my dad could have moved to Seattle or Iowa, and he chose Iowa, and I'm glad he did. Is what I tell myself.
There you go. Okay.
Yep.
Yep.
Yeah.
Seattle versus Iowa. Constant debate in most people's minds. Uh, but the Midwest does have a way of calling people back to it. I've noticed. I am definitely most of the people that I've met here, if I've met a couple, there's one that's from here, and then one that was somehow dragged and convinced to come back to here. Not come back, just come to here for the first time. That's what I've noticed.
Housing prices, cost of living, those are things that usually, and then grandparents.
And grandparents.
Like, grandparents. Those are the top three.
That'll do it. So what were you like as a child, Becky? Were you, you are an extremely active person right now. You're constantly doing something, building something, creating, dreaming, et cetera, et cetera. Your hands are in motion. So have you always been a rambunctious doer of things, or like what were you like when you were younger? What did you want to be when you grew up?
Oh, so well, when I was younger, I was very active. I'm the middle of two sisters, so I'm the middle child. So that meant like I definitely was deprived as the middle child and not loved as much. And so when you're the middle child, you have to really make it on your own. No, I was fun. My older sister, they always said she never smiled or laughed until I was born, and because she's so serious. And then it was my job just to kind of be the goofball of the family, which is great, but it's also sometimes sucks. It's a lot of pressure when your job is to make people laugh and be funny, and then when you have your own stuff going on, like you have to kind of figure out where your identity is on that. So yeah, I was active. I did. I guess you don't probably know this. I was a competitive ice skater.
Oh, fun fact. In San Diego or back when you came to Iowa?
No, I came to Iowa when I was like 2. And so I definitely didn't start the competitive circuit until I was about 3.
Sure.
So I started, yeah. No, I did competitive figure skating and soccer. I refused to go to the girls' soccer team and was like the only girl on like the co-ed team. One other girl was on the co-ed team in 6th grade. Everyone else went to the girls' team. And I was like, no, this is way more fun to play with boys. So there. And yeah, and so like it was neat because I got to meet Michelle Kwan, who's like one of my ice skating heroes, on my birthday, January 2020, right before the pandemic hit. That was really cool.
That's incredible. Was she just randomly in Iowa?
She just like popping by, she was campaigning actually for Joe Biden.
Okay.
And so I went and I got to meet her and like fangirl out. It was a lot of fun of that because like
awesome.
and then like I had to let her know, like I think if anyone my age remembers when Tara Lipinski beat her for the gold, and like I won't talk about it because like I'll get very upset about it. But like I had to like let her know that my little sister loved Tara Lipinski and that it like caused this huge rift in our family, and like I gotta like shit on my sister to Michelle Kwan, and like she wasn't around, but it felt like such triumphant like payback to finally get to be like, hey Colleen, guess what? I told Michelle Kwan that you sucked, that you like Taylor Lipinski. It was cool. We don't have any sister issues anymore. No, we're good.
Yeah, no, you all sound great. Yeah, that was 2020. That was before the pandemic. All family stuff got healed during the pandemic. Said every family ever.
Right.
Now, in that moment, was Michelle Kwan, like, was she on board, or was she like, oh, great, another weird?
She was so cool.
Yeah.
She's like, I think 40, but she looks the same. Holy cow. She's beautiful and gorgeous, and she was so sweet and kind, and it was awesome. It was such a great moment. And then COVID came. So, if you want to like make that correlation, you can, but I don't.
They say never meet your heroes.
Yeah, they say. But the great thing is to another random fact, like, because she was campaigning for Jill Biden. My other weird, if you want an awkward story, funny, weird story fact I had an entire conversation with Jill Biden once, and I didn't know it was Jill Biden. And I had a conversation that I would not have had with Jill Biden had I known it was Jill Biden. I was campaigning for Barack Obama and Joe Biden in 2008. I couldn't decide. So I was flipping between the two. And I was at an event. And so like I would switch my shirts between like an Obama shirt for the volunteering. And then I could switch to like the Biden one. And it was at the very beginning. And it was still before you had social, I don't know. And I was standing behind a dark tent because it's Iowa and we're in a like fairgrounds, shocker. And I was talking to this woman, and I couldn't see her too well, and I was wearing my Obama shirt at the time, and I was telling her how I was switching between the two campaigns, and that I couldn't all this stuff, and she's just we're just kind of talking about politics, and she goes, well, I think Joe would be just happy to be number 2 to Obama. Like, Obama's really great. She's so kind of it. And then all of a sudden, like, they announced, like, okay, next up, like, Dr. Jill Biden. And then she's like, okay, it was great talking to you. And she walks on stage, and I'm just standing there going, oh, fuck. And I was like, I just told her. And it was just this whole thing about, like, but it was such a cool moment, though, because, like, it was just that humility of her saying, like, yeah, like, we don't have any issue with, like, being number 2 to Obama. And that was the very beginning of the campaign. And that's what they ended up being. So it worked out. So in other words, Joe Biden can tell the future.
The moral of the story is definitely that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That was it. That, and also, like, make sure you know who you're talking to and don't run your mouth. So.
Carry a flashlight
Yes.
during dark conversations. That is awesome. Back when you were figure skating, did you have a signature move? Were you like a triple axel, double Lutz, or like what were you doing out there?
So it was. No, I didn't have a signature move. I quit as I was, like, doing my axel, and the reason I quit was because my coach said to me that I had to make ice skating my number 1 priority. She's like, ice skating needs to be number 1 priority, and I looked at her and I said, I'm sorry, I'm 13 years old, and, like, I said figure skating is my number 3. I said school's first, then the cello, and then figure skating. And she's like, well, you'll never make it. And I was like, well, that's cool. And then I was like, hey, Mom, let's quit. And my mom's like, okay, awesome, because this is really expensive. Yeah. She's like, this. Because I was up every morning. I would figure skate before school every single morning. Yeah. And, that was my life. And I can't believe how early I'd get up and we'd do it. And I'd come to, I'd be on the rink at 6 a.m. and doing that was a lot of work. So I had no problem understanding my priority list then.
Yep.
Yeah. Not gonna happen.
Shout out to the cello too. Probably the most beautiful of the string instruments.
Started when I was 3 years old.
I'm noticing a pattern.
Everything starts at 3. No, I kid you not. I wanted to play bagpipes really bad at age 3, and my parents weren't super, like, excited about that one.
Yeah.
So weird. And I want to play bagpipes, and then I went to a recital, and I saw this really pretty high schooler, this girl, play the cello, and I was like, oh, she looked like a princess to me. And I was like, I want to, like, I of course understood that, like, if you play cello, you look like her. That's course, how that works. And so I said to my parents, I want to play cello, and they were very excited about that over the bagpipes. So I started when I was 3 years old. I did. I legit started at age 3 and played all through high school and toured Europe, and it was a lot of fun.
That is incredible. I'm also trying to picture a 3-year-old with a cello.
It looks like a violin.
It does look like a violin.
It looks like a large violin. Pretty much, yeah.
Great.
Looks like a viola. Yeah, I know. Yeah. They're small. They're very tiny. Yeah.
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 Adorable.
So it was. I had a Russian cello teacher in high school who didn't speak English, and so, like, we communicated in Russian, and it was cool. I learned how to understand Russian decently. I couldn't speak it very well, but yeah, she scared the shit out of me too. And a very hairy upper lip. It would get very close to me, and I'd be like, oh my God. It was just, that's what they paid for. I'm very grateful for the experience. Again, looking back at the amount of money my parents spent on our activities is just mind-boggling. Mm-hmm. So dumb.
Yeah, because yes, obviously instruments. Cello. String instruments are notoriously extremely expensive too, especially if we try to get some great ones popping out of Stradivarius. You know what I mean? That's about as much as a whole bunch of figure skating lessons. But and some ice time for sure. But that's cool that you at that age, when your figure skating coach was like, what's it going to be for you, that you knew that, you had your priorities in line. But it's also interesting because, as I read your bio out loud and as we talk, like, you can already sense this building of, you got a lot going on, right? There's a lot of things that you dive into because yes, figure skating wasn't your number one or your number two, but it was still something that you were getting up and dedicating yourself to, right? You weren't half-assing it necessarily. And you're playing the cello at 3, and you're someone who always has a lot of things going on. So when you were growing up and as you were transitioning to trying to make decisions about what do I want to do, who do I want to be, how did you narrow it down, or did you never really want to, and so you just kind of haven't?
Oh, well, considering the fact that we're I think we're gonna become falconers and add falconry to the property. I say I still do think yeah, that sounds like fun. Let's do it. I I always have the mindset of winners quit. Of the idea that it's if you want to win, you got to quit things and understand hey, this isn't me. And so I would go all in on really on shit that I loved, and then I figured out how to coast on things that I didn't love but I recognized the value of. So I love cross country, and so I was all in on that, and I that was huge in my life. I didn't love track, and so I kind of coasted through it. And the senior year I quit because I was this isn't really how I want to spend my time. And so I think that's what I do with my business, being okay, cool, sunk cost, right? This is not just because I did this before doesn't mean I need to continue to do it. So I'm a big fan of quitting. That's awesome.
Big, you heard it here first. Big fan of quitting.
Yeah, quit. That's when I go into schools and talk to them about leadership. I'm hey guys, first things first, let's talk about quitting. Let's do it. Yeah. You don't need to do this school thing.
Yeah. But it's cool because you at least you try things, right? You invest in them, you put forth effort, and then it's making the decision of no, this ain't it. But it's not you're necessarily judging things from afar and being no, I couldn't do that. No, I couldn't do that. Because I think we both know a lot of people that are trying to figure out what to do, who they are, why they want to do what they want to do, or et cetera, that are sitting around waiting for the idea to come and smack them across the face, as opposed to you need to be, if you want to catch the football, you got to put yourself in the path of the football, right? And you have put yourself in the path of a number of different footballs to try to catch and figure out if that's what you want to run with, as opposed to waiting for someone to be come, my daughter, let me show you the way, and this is what you will do, right? And so that's been kind of cool to learn about you, to see, to witness, because even in the time that we've become friends, I feel like you've had a number of different passions that have kind of leveled up and leveled down, and we're kind of adding this and we're adding that. And there's times where we get on the phone and we'll talk about something, and then all of a sudden on Instagram the next week you'll be doing something completely different that we hadn't even mentioned. Oh yeah, we just decided to build a goat factory in the back of the house, or whatever. And so goat house, goat, whatever.
Please tell me what a goat factory
would
do, because apparently, because you do, guys. Just in case you don't understand, you actually make goats in a factory. So they are produced in a factory. Is how you make them. Yep, they aren't born.
You heard it here first. You heard it here first.
Yeah, that works. More you know. I am somebody that I say one of my downfalls, one of my things that I don't think is a huge, it works for me, but also works against me, is I am incredibly driven and very high energy, not in the sense that I am, if I'm at a party, I am not the life of the party. I'm in my corner. I got my friends and I'll have a great time, but I'm not the bouncing off the walls person at all. But I will haul stones and rocks for 12 hours straight, and then get inside, cook a 5-course meal, and then get on my computer and work. I don't stop. I am the Energizer Bunny in that, and I'm so driven. And when I do something, it is done well. And I'm not a perfectionist, because I have zero issue in being you know what, that's not worth it to be perfect at that. But yeah, I don't half-ass anything. So yeah, we didn't build a goat factory, built a goat cottage, which again, I keep forgetting it's not a thing because you can't go to people and be like, oh, yes, this is for my goat cottage. We were building another goat barn and I decided to make it look like a cottage. And so it has like a white picket fence and shutters. And there's a little wine bar inside too that we
It's
just
a
added.
wine bar inside.
Yes, there is because
For the goats
because
or the bachelorette parties.
both.
Right.
We had somebody give us some shells that they got off like Wayfair or something like that. They're like, hey, we got these shells and they're too rustic and we didn't have to return them. And they were like for like was it like a wet bar? Is that what you call it? Like where you have like and I was like, cool. And I couldn't figure out where to put them in our house. And I was like, oh, they work perfect in the goat barn. And I forgot that it has the thing for like the wine glasses. And so I now have like a bottle of wine and wine glasses out there. So when I go and I want to hang out with the goats, I can have some wine. Works out great. Where's mom? Mom doesn't drink in the closet. No, kids. She drinks in the goat cottage.
In the goat cottage.
In the goat cottage. Yeah. It's
that's actually why you have that's why you have to call it a cottage, because there's the wine bars out there. Now it's got to be called a cottage. But truthfully, if you go to Becky's Mindful Kitchen on Instagram, you can see pictures of this goat cottage. It truly is beautiful. And random as fuck. So yeah. So Becky, we got cross country, we got cello, we got every question I ask, we get a new passion in here. We got goats, we got falconry, we got cooking. So when you decided to open Becky's Mindful Kitchen, what would tell me the impetus behind that? When was that? Was that just kind of like another thing of like, hey, let me add another thing on. I'm already an accountant, a low-level trauma surgeon, and let me open up this. Or like, what was the impetus behind starting Becky's Mindful Kitchen?
I am a goat surgeon, so
sure,
I have done surgery on goats and chickens. Occasional human, side business, everyone. It wasn't random. What it was is I got diagnosed with type 1 diabetes when my firstborn was like a year old. And I started diving into looking at food, and because I grew up eating organic food but I didn't really understand nutrition to the degree I wanted to. And I also grew up cooking, and my parents, they were wonderful in so many ways. And I think one of the things I appreciate most, above and beyond the cello lessons and ice skating, was travel. And so we traveled around Europe a lot as a child. And so I got to learn how to cook from people all around the world. And I loved it. And so I loved cooking. I got into like, what's healthy eating actually all about? All that crap. I started going to people's homes. They'd say like, hey, can you come in and help teach me how to cook? And I was like, okay. I was like, this is interesting. And I was a single mom at the time and living at home with my parents, like all should do at some point or another. And I realized the potential for a business. So I started teaching classes more at a local culinary school. And then I was like, you know what? I'm going to start my own cooking school. And so I did. And it started very simple and it's grown tremendously. And since COVID, it's very much expanded. So we built a second location, like a new house. We were the builders for it. So we were our own general contractors, built a house in 2019 and built a commercial kitchen in the basement. So I have a separate entrance and everything. So no one ever has to go through my house. And we were in there for about 7 months before the pandemic hit, and used that time to really add on a lot. So yeah, give me a pandemic and I will make an entire like fairy tale treehouse, goat cottage, and zip lines, archery course, the usual. But it's been cool because it has expanded, and I've allowed myself, I think, James, and I see this in you, where we understand the value of having that red thread, right? That thing that connects all we do, your North Star, your purpose, whatever you want to call it. It's by having that and allowing that to guide you instead of allowing, the narrative or expectations or the thought of like, oh, this is what I should do. Because by giving myself that freedom, I was able to like test things out and be like, okay, this is not what I want to do, or this sounds cool. And like you said, like it might look really random to a lot of people, but there's usually a purpose to it. And then with the change of kind of going to more of the mindfulness and the leadership stuff, I've been silently doing that for a little while to make sure that it wasn't a one-off, that it wasn't going to be something that I decided wasn't high on my priority, that it wasn't going to be ice skating. You know, it's going to be a lifelong thing.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Yeah.
I have zero idea what your question was, by the way.
Thanks. Yeah. I mean, finding out that you're type 1 diabetic is certainly a wall to run into at first, and then you got to figure stuff out. You don't just keep on keeping on. Like life changes once you find out that you're type 1 diabetic, and so in your bio you talked about almost dying a few times,
Yeah.
and I believe it, because it is a very serious thing to live with, and so as she checks her insulin pump.
I know, right? Well, in case there's any, because there's us type 1s, there's not a ton of us, but there's always some random one of us places. Yeah. I've had my blood sugar refuses to come down, so I think I have a bad site. But yeah, so if anyone's like, if you understand blood sugar, my blood sugar has been around 350 this entire conversation, and so my mouth is very dry. And that's why I keep trying to silently sip water. Yeah, so type 1, I have almost died. There was one time that was too close to make me feel good inside. Not that most like almost dying things are like a feel good experience. But and that one was one where if it wasn't for, I was living at home because we were building our house. So I was living at home with my parents, with my kids and my husband and all that. And my father had left for work and he forgot something. And so he ended up having to come back. And it's because he came back that he found me on the floor with my 3-year-old, like with her hands underneath my head, trying to like wake mommy up. And like, if he hadn't come home, I don't know what would have happened. Well, I do. I do. And it's not a happy thing that would have happened. And so it's those moments though that like they do impact you. And that's why I hold with me that the Stoic thought of like memento mori, like we all are gonna die. Like everyone's gonna die. That's a guarantee. Like and to think that you have a ton of control over when that's gonna happen is a bit silly. So live every day as as if it's your last. Because it might be.
Yeah, 10 out of 10 doctors agree we will die someday. Yeah, for sure. That's horrifying, Becky. The image of your daughter holding your head, and I mean, the image that your dad had to witness coming home. I mean, I'm sure it's one that it didn't leave his brain either. And that's so much. And it's interesting because you're not just it's so much more than a cooking school, what you started, right? And I know that you're moving into leadership consulting and whatnot. And I'm excited to talk to you about that. But I want to talk to you about this one word right in the middle, right? Becky's mindful kitchen, where mindfulness has been a piece of everything that you've done. And so I'm wondering, where does mindfulness come into your work and your life? Like, is this something you had always been practicing, or once you became type 1 diabetic, did you then start, whether it was meditating, or do you say mindfulness is, I know you're avid reader of philosophy, or whatnot, what does mindfulness mean to you, so much so that you're like, you know what, it's going right in the middle of the name of the business?
Okay. All right. So truth be told,
my original name was Mindful.
My middle name is Mindful. So that would be really not great middle name. So yes, mindful. The reason I went with that, I didn't do anything with it. Okay, the mindfulness part of my business, James, was not apparent in my business until really like the 2020. And it had been eaten. The reason why is because while like I had spent, for the last 10 years, like I said, like especially last 10 years, like studying mindfulness and leadership and philosophy and all that stuff, is I was still very actively like bulimic. And I felt like I was such a fraud, and that haunted me. And I just like never felt like I could incorporate mindfulness or like mindful eating, any of that. It's like I felt so silly that people would, come here to, Becky's Mindful Kitchen, and I'd be talking about like healthy eating and all that. And then, be like binging and purging. And like, it just didn't, and it drove me crazy. And it was really starting to get to me I'm realizing like in starting kind of 2018 when I had like a pretty nasty like, relapse and stuff. And I was like, this isn't going to, like, my business will never become what it needs to be if I keep this a secret. And it
Mhm.
took me until October of 2020 to make it public. And it was so fascinating because I did tell a few friends when I was like having to go, I went and tried some recovery places and all that. And, kind of try to bring them into the fold. And I had some people who didn't believe me. Like they,
Mm.
they didn't believe me that I was struggling with this because I had done such a good job of fooling everyone. Um, and to that's why I always let people know, like, you don't know anyone's story because there's no way anyone would have known what I was doing. I did such a great job. I was so good. I was been doing it for 20 plus years. I was fantastic at living the double life, like very talented. Again, my poor husband, because I'm like, dude, I am so good at lying. And he's like, not what I want to hear. And so but once I was able, because I started writing about mindfulness more and I saw people really enjoying it. And I was like, damn it, I still can't type and write about this if I'm not completely honest. And so once in October 2020, when I ripped the band-aid off, then all of a sudden it was like boom, like the mindfulness became real. And
Yeah.
BMK, Becky's Mindful Kitchen, finally actually became Becky's Mindful Kitchen. Until then, it was just a word. It was a
Mhm.
word that was, I wanted it to be part of it, but I could never get there until now. So that's that.
Yeah. I
That's that.
appreciate the self-awareness about that. Ironically, um, uh, yeah, and it's evident now as you check out your website, as you have conversations with you, that it is though it took a minute for it to show up in somewhere besides just the name. It is very evident that it is heavily practiced in the work that you do now, right? And
Took about
so
7 years for it to show up. I've
yeah.
been doing this for a while.
It's incredible. Yeah.
I
But
know.
it's here, right? I mean,
Yeah.
and it's interesting that whether it was intuition or just maybe a cool marketing idea initially, but like how it was something that you're like, no, this is important. I just don't necessarily know how to talk about it yet. But the fact that you named it what you did is incredible.
I
Um,
was so scared that people were going to not want to send their kids to summer camp because if they knew that I was dealing with that, or they wouldn't believe, like nothing I said, like that they wouldn't believe my words had value. And I was so wrong. And it took me a long time to realize, like, wait a second, this actually gives me authority to speak on the stuff I'm saying because people will realize, like, oh, okay, like she's not just this like girl living this really awesome life. Like she has struggled too. Not that people look at me and they're like, she has the most fantastic life, but I have a very, very, very privileged life. And if you didn't know my struggles, I think it'd be very hard to read what I write and take it seriously. And so it had the opposite effect. Gave me more
mhm.
authority rather than take it away.
Yeah. Yeah, the power of lived experience, and shared stories. Yeah, for sure. It's Yeah, that's beautiful. I mean, that's a lot of what I talk about with just the role that vulnerability needs to play in leadership or in conversations and relationships, right? Like it builds bridges, it builds way more bridges than it destroys. But we're convinced that most people will be turned off by us or like "Ugh," or just like or whatever. So we sometimes we don't open up and share those moments when in fact uh it creates relatable times for us to be like, oh wait, since I see myself in you, I actually want to walk the walk with you or have you help me walk the walk. It's really powerful the way it works.
Yeah, I don't know. It's like the same with parenting. Like I remember when I started talking to people about, and I don't know if you've ever experienced this with your baby, but like I used to be terrified of holding my child. So my parents, they have this like ledge. They have a split level house, and this ledge overlooks their living room and is in the kitchen. And I used to never allow myself to stand with my child near that ledge because I had this fear of what if I just dropped her over the edge, like, and just like not
Mhm.
trust me that whole like, and then I'd be like, oh my god, like what kind of like monster of a mother am I that I don't even consider it? And then once I like started mentioning to people and other people like, oh my God, me too. I'm so scared that I'm gonna just like drop my like if they're on a hike, they don't go to the edge of their kids. It's like that fear of like, what if I just did that? And those like thoughts we have that makes us think that we are alone and weird and crazy until you actually say it and you realize like, oh no, I'm not crazy. We all are crazy. Like that feels good. You're all psycho monsters. But
Yeah.
it's true though, those things that we're afraid of, just like looking at your child and thinking of them dead at night. Like, you want to love them, and then all of a sudden you're like, what if they were dead? And you're thinking, what kind of weird, like dark, twisted person am I? Until you realize, like, oh no. A lot of us have thought that. Now I understand at this point, everyone listening is like, I've never thought that. Well, screw you. You must poop Skittles as well. But have you ever had those moments as a dad where you've like had a thought that you're like, oh no, this isn't a good dad thought?
I have, yeah. Yeah, it's been a few of them. I think one of them, sometimes it often, this is selfish and I could probably explore a little more, but a lot of times it's around me dying, of like what happens when I die, and like there's so much more that I want to, um, there's so much more that I want to do with my son, and there's more life that I want to live with my wife, and there's like times where I'm like, it would be very selfish if you died right now, James. Like you'd really fuck up a lot of things for a lot of people. It'd be very rude of you.
Yeah.
And so like I think about that. I don't necessarily, I've thought about my son hurting himself. Like we just recently installed the gates on the stairs, right? As he's become more and more curious and mobile. It is like that kind of idea of like of him falling down the stairs and deeply hurting himself or something like that because of something that I could have easily prevented. Like those are sometimes thoughts that I have for sure. I don't necessarily think about him dying necessarily. But I do think about him hurting himself in such a way that would deeply impact the rest of his life. I think that's where my brain is going. I don't know if it's because my brain has stopped me from like, yep, that could also result in death though, James. So let's go ahead and name that. I don't know if my brain's like, no. But yeah, I would say most of the thoughts that I've had around it are more around something deadly happening to me or something just dramatic happening to him.
Well, and one thing I've changed is like, first of all, like it would be very selfish of you to die right now, and you screw up a lot of things, so don't do that.
Yeah, working on
I'm gonna just affirm that fear, that story. No, it's it would be very sad if you were to die. And you know what? I would make the trip to your funeral. I would
Wow.
drive up there. I would do it for sure. I've thought about that of certain friends who don't live. I'm like, would I go to your funeral? And like same with like family members. Yeah, you make the list.
Big compliment.
Yeah, yep. Now, oh God,
Yeah.
now that I've said it, like people will be like, oh no, did she go? Because that's what they'll all be wondering at your
Yeah.
Don't worry, I'll post a photo. So it's like I now when I look at my kids, I do think of them dying. Like when I say goodbye to them or I kiss them goodnight, like I think like, okay, you might not wake up in the morning. And how would that feel? Because like again, that momentum more like keeping that like having that new relationship with death and the concept of death and loss and being like, it could happen. And so like you better keep it on the forefront of your brain, not to be afraid of it, but to respect the time you have now. You respect it so much more if you realize that it's not guaranteed, it's not promised. And it's my husband's a firefighter, so he spends 100 hours per week on the two different department he's on, responding to calls, and a lot of those calls are people who die. They didn't see it coming. They didn't know that morning. So it's really naive and ignorant of any of us to be selfish with our time. I think that's my biggest fear. My biggest fear is that is of wasting time, and and like that regret of being like, God damn it, like
Yeah.
why was I doing that? Why did I spend that time scrolling on Instagram? Why did I spend that time like worrying about that shit instead of having time with those I love? why was I on James's podcast? Like, why did I do that?
Wasted an hour of my life.
What was that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
One of my favorite movies of all time is A Bronx Tale. And one of the quotes from that movie is worst thing in life is wasted talent. And I love that quote. And I usually modify it almost identically to what you just said is the worst thing in life is wasted time. Right. This is the moment that we have. I've said on here before, right? The Earth's what, 4.6 billion years old, 5.6, a lot of billion years old. And you know, I'm going to be around for 88 years, right? Like this is the moment. This is my moment that I've been given. And so let's do something with it. And
You
if
know,
I don't,
88.
then I missed it.
Did you do like a Ouija board? Do you know it's 88 years?
I don't. That's just a number I'd be happy at.
Okay.
That's fine with me if I make it to 88.
Okay, cool.
I don't want to be too presumptuous to be like, I'll make it to 100. I don't think I've lived the kind of life that enables me to do that yet. So yeah, but 88 feels good. I feel like that beats most odds, but not quite all of them, you know?
That works. I was just wondering if we had a confirmation of that from some.
Yeah, no, I haven't Ouija board in a long time and forgot to ask that one last time I did.
We just bought one yesterday for my kids. And so I don't ever use it. I don't like it. I have nothing against it. I just am like, why would I I know. Nope. I don't trust myself with it. And what it would get to my thoughts. And last night, my 6-year-old came down scared in the middle of the night because of the Ouija board. And I just turned to my husband. I said, this one's on you. You deal with this one because you bought it. Your turn. Yeah, you got this one. Here you go.
Speaking of Ouija boards, let's talk about philosophy.
That is the philosophy I said.
I call that a transition in the business, Becky. All right. You just keep up where you need to. Something you've talked about with me before, and something you even talk about in some of the leadership consulting work that you do, is your passion for Stoic philosophy. And Stoicism is something that you are in deep practice with and belief of, right? For those of you playing at home, I looked it up, and here's a quick definition. Stoicism teaches the development of self-control and fortitude as means of overcoming destructive emotions. But it's a powerful philosophy, one that a lot of people often find to be cold. But I don't necessarily think that I don't see it as that, but I'm wondering for you, when did you become passionate about philosophy and maybe specifically Stoicism?
Okay. So first of all, I think Stoicism was one of the most misunderstood philosophies as far as like being cold and all that. So like people think of Stoic and like Stoicism, and you think of like the Queen of England and that discussion, like, oh, was she Stoic enough? You know, like it's like in that, like, so Stoic is like little s, right? And Stoicism is the big S of philosophy. So Stoicism is not anti-emotion. It is not like it's the teaching the ability to have emotions, but not let emotions have you, right? So it's in recognizing what's in your control and what isn't. Those would be kind of the thing. And it's very similar to the serenity prayer, right? Accepting the things that aren't in control, letting go what isn't, and hoping you can tell a difference of the two. For me, I have been interested in Stoicism longer than I knew I was interested in Stoicism. So I like my idea of mindfulness, my idea of philosophy, and like the writings I was doing, all were very in line with Stoicism. And it was just, a few years ago when I started, kind of connected the dots more. And I was like, what? Like, I had no idea. These like old dudes in like ancient Roman times, like stole my ideas, motherfuckers. And I was like, I finally found something that connected, because as like someone who teaches mindfulness, and like people think like meditation and yoga, and especially like they see me and they're like, she's a female, I think. And, like she's mindfulness, like I must be meditation and yoga. And I'm like, no. Like my mindfulness is Stoicism. It is an action-based mindfulness. It is a, being, there's a wonderful quote of Marcus Aurelius of like, be tolerant of others and strict with yourself. And this is like the quote that took me the longest time to kind of work out. This is the quote that kept me from calling myself a Stoic, because I didn't agree with it, because I kept hearing strict with yourself as being hard on yourself. And I finally was like, oh, no. It's not. it's being tolerant with others and being strict with yourself, in that recognizing, like, don't, like, being strict enough with yourself that you're not hurting yourself, that you recognize, like, where your boundaries are, you understand, like, where your values are, and, like, holding yourself to that, and not spending time beating yourself over shit that you shouldn't be. So for me, though, a delay, something that delayed my complete, like, immersion in the Stoic world, is that, so there's a man called Ryan Holiday. I don't know if you've heard of him at all. He is, like, probably the most popular, like, modern day Stoic. He has the Daily Stoic podcast, which is a wonderful podcast. I mean, on par with this one, which not many are. And it's a very, very good podcast. It's a daily email. My husband, who's he's very into mindfulness. He got a degree in, like, Eastern religion, and he was a Buddhist when I met him. I don't think he's a Buddhist anymore. I should clarify that with him. I wouldn't call him a Buddhist anymore. But he started getting into, like, Ryan Holiday stuff. And I'm somebody who, like, if somebody tells me, like, oh, you're gonna love this, or you need to watch this, like, I usually don't like it.
Yeah.
And he had me watch a couple of Ryan Holiday stuff, and I was just not in a good place, as I still really deal with the bulimia, and I don't know, it challenged me in a way I didn't want to be challenged, and I decided that I hated Stoicism, without knowing anything about it, only because my husband really liked it, and I was just being a butthead. I was being a total butthead. And then, like, when I realized a couple of years later, like, how much I did like it, I was like, oh no, I can't. Oh shit. Like, I'm going to have to admit to my husband that, like, I like the same thing that he was liking then.
Mhm.
And so I kind of kept it a secret for a little bit. And then finally had to be like, just, like, work it into the conversation. And he was really cool. He didn't rub it in my face. The fact that, like,
What a good guy.
he was really cool about it. He was much more mature than I would have been. But it's the same reason as to why, like, I didn't like Napoleon Dynamite, that movie, when it came out, because everyone told me it's the funniest movie ever. And I watched it. I was like, this is not funny.
It was
So,
not. It was not a good. That was a highly overrated movie.
yeah. So I thought Stoicism was going to be the same. And now, to the point that I think Ryan Holiday, I think he does a fan. I'm a big fan of his. I see why I thought he was a douchebag.
Yeah.
Because of the mindset I was in. But now I see him for what he is, which is somebody who, like, does his own thing, and that's awesome. I think he's
Yeah.
really smart. So,
Mhm.
and his podcast is great, as, again, on par with yours.
Oh, thank you. I'll pay you later. This philosophy of Stoicism, where it's, I love how you put it. I don't know if that was your quote or somebody else's. Either way to steal it, or way to say it. But the idea of Stoicism is about having emotions, but not letting your emotions have you.
I don't know if that's mine or not. I've always said it. But who knows? There's no such thing as an original quote anymore these days. Like,
I'll Google it. We'll find out. If Google says it's yours, it's yours. But now that is a powerful thought, right? The ability to not let these things take over your brain, right? Especially in a world where anxiety runs rampant, and obviously depression runs rampant as well. But I feel like we're talking a lot more about anxiety lately than depression. It's currently winning the battle of the bottom. But that thought is wildly contradictory to that of an anxious mind. Now, I, as someone who is diagnosed with anxiety, hear you say that and be like, that sounds lovely. Ain't gonna happen. Well, that sounds lovely. And so I'm wondering, how does one, besides listening to Ryan Holiday, as you keep marketing somebody else's podcast on this show, but I've listened to it too, and it actually is quite good. So feel free to check out the Daily Stoic. But still, but how does one begin that process? Like, how did you begin that process of kind of almost getting out of your own way to be able to hear it and then feel it and then finally live it?
So here's my downfall: is my integrity. It's like I like, my integrity is so important to me that when I realize, like, okay, this is my thing, Stoicism's my thing, and I've spent the time, I've read all the original works, multiple translations. Like, I spent a lot of time reading ancient Roman texts, and it's not like, that's not a beach read. But it's so, it's like really getting to it. Once I realized, like, okay, this is gonna be my thing, I can't handle hypocrisy and I can't handle saying like, hey, I believe in this, and then I'm not living it myself. So
Mm-hmm.
having made that decision, just like when I decided to like go into recovery with bulimia, like I just decided, I was like, okay, I'm gonna do it. And once I make a decision, I'm pretty much set in it. And so how did I do this? It was kind of having that non-negotiable with myself of I cannot act one way in my personal life and then show up another way on social media. So and I'm not perfect at all. Take a moment. I know, but like it's
Whoa.
yeah, whew, took a while to get there for you. I'm not perfect, but I own it when I'm not. And so there's when it comes to anxiety, right? And again, it helps that I have a partner who calls me on it, and I call him out on it. He doesn't always enjoy it. And he's like, stop trying to like stoicism me. I was like, I'll stoic you all day long, sir. But
Your
that
dirty
idea,
talk's very weird in the
very,
household.
it is very, yeah, it's very important. Turn on, like, give me some like John Oliver Last Week Tonight or whatever that show called, and like some stoic philosophy, and I'm good. It's recognizing the simplicity.
Yeah.
And that's what I love about stoicism. And I made a comment, damn you, insulin pump. Hey, I'm finally heading down the right direction. Thank God. So and I mentioned this to you in another conversation, which is in my cooking classes, my hope is, and I tell people this, I say, I hope you leave this class thinking, oh my God, why the hell did I just pay for this? That was so easy. And if you leave thinking that, then I know I've done my job and you're actually going to like use what you learned in your life. The same goes to stoicism. It is so simple. And I love it. And I love being able to go in and make it simple for people and recognizing like what's in your control. You can only control your own thoughts, your words, and your actions. You can't control anything else. And my goodness, like we have enough to deal with if we just focus on controlling our words and thoughts, right? And even our actions. And to let go of that, your life just becomes more simple. So when shit goes wrong, be like, okay, cool. Like, what of that can I control? Identify it, deal with that, and let the rest go. And it's not being like a blob and just like adapting whatever comes, because again, you have this like framework of your values and your moral non-negotiables in which you go through life. The Stoics talk about virtue, but you have the agility, right? You don't walk around with a stick up your ass. You have a backbone. There's a difference, and a backbone bends, sticks up ass is stoned. And so just the difference there is important, I think. And one of the most powerful things is I just remind myself, like, we don't always get our rathers. And that was a quote from Teddy Roosevelt, who one of my favorite presidents, and he was a huge Stoic, but like he was on his camping trip and everything was going wrong. He was with his friend and like the weather was shit, the supplies are crappy, like everything that could go wrong went wrong. And the storm was coming in, and he turned to his friend who was like whistling as he was like hitching up the horses, and he says like, I'd rather it wouldn't storm. And his friend looked at him and says, well, it doesn't look like we're getting our rathers on this trip, does it? And I kept on whistling. And I love that concept of being like, we don't always get our rathers.
Yeah.
And like, that's it. And so there's, amor fati is Latin for embrace your fate, love your fate. So when it comes at you, just embrace it. You can't change it, so embrace it. So that's why that's how I kind of use it. As far as anxiety goes, there's a great one. Impetus, my favorite philosopher, says, when I see an anxious person, I ask myself, what do they want? Because if it's something outside of their control, why would they be anxious? And it's so true. Like if you are wanting something outside of your control, like you can't get it. You don't have control over it. So don't be anxious about it. Let it go. And it just makes your life simple. Boom.
Yeah.
Done. But yeah.
This is, sorry, I'm sitting with this because there's a lot to chew on, as always, and why I appreciate our conversations. I love this philosophy because it sounds like a lighter way to live. It truly is. You're able to let more stuff go. You're able to kind of focus on what matters, and you're better able to prioritize. And anytime you're able to channel your energy more specifically, instead of into 500 things, if you can channel it into five, then you're also more productive. You also feel more complete. There's a whole bunch of benefits to it all. So it sounds great. And I believe that it is possible. One thing for me that I think one area where I struggle with this, besides the anxiety, which is surmountable, but and so is what I'm about to say as well, but it still is a sticking point where, for me, a lot of my am I good enough? Am I funny enough? Am I hot enough? Am I successful enough? Am I happy enough? Am I whatever enough? A lot of that, I am still struggling on letting myself be the bar, as opposed to letting other people set the bar for me. Right. And just that idea of just the idea of asking ourselves the question of would you rather be liked or respected? Now, obviously, the dream is to be both, but ultimately, respect is the answer. But I don't necessarily know if a lot of my actions and the way that I carry myself, or the way that I weigh other people's thoughts, or what they think about me, would show that that is my answer to that question. I think it would lean more towards oh, this guy wants to be liked more than respected. Now, and so in thinking about the idea of Stoicism, it is very appealing for the reasons that I outlined before. And it's also going to take some work, I know, for me to bring all of those thought processes in-house, instead of farming them out to external processor, or not external sources or manufacturing sites, right? I got to bring it in. And that is something that I've been trying to work on. I work on it in counseling, but that is something that is hard for me to do. And I just offer that up, not as a counterpoint, but just as here's a place where this sounds good, but I got some things I got to work on in order to actually truly be able to do it. And here are some of the bigger places for me. I'd be curious to hear about your thoughts on that, or giant criticisms. I'm fine either way.
Either way, one of the same. The best thing, so much of where I think it works on is realizing your self-worth, right? So you look outside for that. Is I like to practice fact checking a lot.
Mm-hmm.
Stoicism, a lot of philosophies, a lot of rhetoric is all about really bringing up emotions in people, and you want to learn how speak in a way, politicians speak in a way that excite people and passions, all that, right? Stoicism goes the opposite direction. So instead of saying oh my gosh, I totally bombed that speech, and no, oh my God, they hated it, and I know I didn't make anyone laugh, all that stuff, watching our language, the words we use, we are constantly using hyperbole, right? And we're constantly using judgment words instead of labeling things for what it is. And so for you, if it's do people like you? Do they respect you? Looking at okay, what's demonstrated one or the other? If I say if I, after we're done at this, and I say to my husband oh man, it didn't go well at all, oh my God, it totally sucked, and and Bill was okay, well, how do you know that? And if I had to stop and actually put that out and well, do I actually have any facts for that? Or I use the term, and again, he's not old enough yet, but maybe some listeners have older kids that take showers. I love this thing of my kids. My older daughters were really upset, yelling at my younger daughter, and I had to feel do I have to deal with this? And I realized I did, and they're upset. They said she did a really bad job of showering. She didn't take a good shower, Mom. I was well, what do you mean? She was only in there for 2 minutes. I was okay, well, let's see what happened. She took a quick shower. She showered quickly. Your judgment is she showered poorly. And recognizing the difference of those two. And the same goes with when we're looking at our judgments. Are we enough? Like, how are we labeling things, both ourselves? Like, how are you even labeling if what respect looks like and if someone likes looks like? And I am very much a fan of the fact of knowing, like, I can't control if someone respects me. That's outside of my control. I can control if I have dignity, like, but respect outside my control. If someone likes me, I can't control it, and no one's obligated to like me. And so it's a lot easier to go that route. I, however, have to live with myself. So how do I turn it inside instead of farming out and like putting external processes and all the other goat factories that we're sending this stuff to be made? It's always doing the simple thing of like, if it's not right, don't do it. If it's not true, don't say it. And that's a Marcus Aurelius quote. And if I just go through my day doing the next right thing, doing like holding myself to that, because if I lie, if I do something bad, if I do it, like it hurts me, not the other person. If you're a dick to me, that doesn't hurt me at all because I don't have to live with the fact that you are a dick. You have to live with the fact that you are a dick, and no one wants to live with that. And so, and the same goes to how I talk to myself. So being really selfish in that, like, I want to feel good about myself in the day. So I just keep it simple. If it's not right, don't do it. If it's not true, don't say it. And that involves walking by a piece of trash on the floor and like not picking up and realizing, damn it, I have to pick it up because that was the right thing to do. Going back and picking it up and putting it in the trash can. Like start small on those small little things and like be like, that's my worth. My self-worth is the fact that I recognize what's right and what isn't. The Stoics have a thing of it's not events themselves that upset us, but our judgments of them. So something happens and you have to decide, like, can you build in that moment, take that moment to reflect of like, okay, am I going to ascend? Am I going to like ascend to this? Am I going to like allow myself to make a judgment of this? Like, is this good or bad? Or am I going to be like, no, I'm not going to like engage in that. So if you were to like start like tapping your fingers on your desk and like kind of like tilt your head and kind of look off, I will have to take that moment to be like, okay, am I going to see that and make a judgment that James is bored right now? Or am I going to just be like, cool, he tapped his fingers, he moved his head. That's all that is. I don't know if that makes sense. So just like going really small and detailed on that of everything, of just getting curious.
Yeah.
What you do.
One of the early guests here on Diner Talks was Stacey Nato Kirsten, and she talks about one of her quotes that I love is "fact check the inner critic," and I hear that in what you're saying as well, and it is it's powerful. It's powerful to think about. It's powerful to think about, and I also love how, another reason to think more about it is, makes us less judgy of others, less judgy of ourselves. It just puts a little separation in there. Not everything is attached, right? Not everything is because this happened, then everything else is, oh God, right? There doesn't have like, there's a detachment between some of these things. And if we handle them each as individual things as opposed to like, oh, the dominoes are falling, everything's terrible, then we're able to stop spiraling. We're able to stop some of the stories. We're able to just attack things at their core, and in the little minutiae, in the little moments, as opposed to this big dramatic thing. And so, I appreciate
you're not that special. Like, that's what I like to tell people, which, by the way, made the mistake of giving that line, like, you're not that special. When I was talking to a bunch of first graders about like mindfulness and stuff, and like about the whole concept is you're not that special. Like, the world, the universe doesn't align to make your day horrible. I wrote a post about the whole idea of like, we often say, when it rains, it pours. Well, no, it doesn't. Like sometimes it just rains and like sometimes it sprinkles. Like it doesn't always have to fucking pour, man. But like the minute it starts to rain, everybody starts looking for it to pour. And if you
Yeah.
do that, you are guaranteed to find yourself like a tsunami somewhere, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like you will find that confirmation bias is dangerous. And the world though is not out to get you. Like people don't care enough about you to rearrange their day to make your life hell. And yet we go about our day taking everything so personally. And even our own actions. Like it's like you screw up and you're like, God damn it, like why did I do that? Like, oh man, that's such a bad decision. Like, no, often like we make good decisions and the
Mm-hmm.
outcome sucks. And one thing we do, we teach archery, and there's a big thing like the Stoic archer, and that idea of everything up to that moment of when the arrow leaves the bow is in your control. Once that arrow leaves the bow, it's out of your control. So our focus isn't on where it hits on that target. It's like, are you doing everything right leading up to that moment? And people will look at something and say like, oh, that was a really bad decision, and beat themselves up. And they're judging that decision based on the outcome, which is outside their control. And if you look back, like, no, like a lot of those times, like we make good decisions and it just doesn't go well.
Mm-hmm.
And that's applied to like, same with like people, like if someone wins the lottery, be like, oh man, that was a really good decision I made to buy that lottery ticket. Like, no, that was a really bad decision to buy a lottery ticket, because the lottery is not like, that's not a good decision to make. Your odds are not good. You got lucky,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so the same goes to you. So like give yourself a little bit more grace in that.
Yeah.
Even though she died 10 years ago.
Shout out to Grace. Rest in peace.
Yeah.
Becky, one thing that you've been doing a lot more and more lately is leadership consulting, using some of these ways of life and applying a lot of Stoicism to leadership. As you mentioned, you've been doing a ton of research and reading ancient Roman texts. Shout out to Impetus. I was wondering if Impetus was going to make an appearance in here. I'm glad he did. How you doing, bud? Thanks for joining the show. One of the sponsors of the show, actually, Impetus. So the referral code doesn't work anymore because you don't have the stone tablet, but
Nope.
but still the
QR code.
But I'm wondering, connect the dots for me. How do you apply some of this stuff to the leadership consulting? Like, what does your leadership consulting look like when thinking about it through this lens?
Okay, I can connect some dots for you. Quick little side story. One of my most embarrassing moments in elementary school was in kindergarten. We had to do those connect the dot type like picture things. I connected the numbers, not the dots. And so my unicorn was like oddly shaped, and I got shamed by the teacher on that one. Never forgot it. So anytime it says connect the dots, I'm like, yes, not the numbers. Because if you connect the numbers, your unicorn looks funky. You get teased. Got a little work to do on that one, don't I? Yeah, with this, I love doing mindful leadership consulting. And my approach to mindful leadership is this: like it's about, can you stay in the moment while also keeping that perspective, right? Like a mindful leader, like you gotta be agile enough and have the perception to identify, like, okay, do we need to stick on this path or do we need to make adjustments? Do we? What are the needs of that moment, while also not forgetting that, hey, there's something else down the road we got to think of. So it's that reflection and your reflexes and your reflection, right? So teaching that reflex, what is that reflex you have? So when I go into businesses and maybe it's the culture needs help, maybe they have specific employees they want me to work with, or sometimes it's going through the whole strategic planning process. And so this spring we'll have all new full day workshops out here where it is going through strategic planning and doing team building, cooking stuff. And I have my own version of like a SWOT analysis, right, that we go through. But what I really kind of drill in is this idea of reflex and reflection. And I never ask anybody to do something I wouldn't do, which is get comfortable being uncomfortable. Fact about me is I had a speech impediment as a child where I said my R's as W's. My name is Rebecca Russo, which means it was Rebecca Russo when I was a kid. And so having my thing be about reflexes and, reflection is basically like being like, hey, let's just like dance around this like fire pit a little bit, because every time I have to say any R words, I still like have to think on it. So like I put myself in that place for everyone else so we can all be fools together. But a lot of leaders, right, that reflex when something goes wrong, when they get scared, when an obstacle gets in the way, is the reflex is a knee jerk, is to go as far away from it as possible. And is usually like go to the other extreme. Right? It's like, get away from me. What I teach is the reflex of, I call kind of like, for me, it's like the mom car arm. So when you're driving and you have to like swerve, or you put your arm out to like hold back your kid, okay, or like your bottle of wine or beer or whatever you have in the seat, that you're like, I gotta keep this safe. You kids are tucked in back, but I have kids now who are able to sit in the front seat. So like putting your arm there, right, to hold them. We all experience that at some point growing up. That reflex is you're first of all the leader going towards the problem, not going away. And you're not going the opposite direction. You're just saying, hey, let's stop right here. Like, let's not let this get any worse. And you're putting yourself in between, your employees, whoever you're leading, and the issue. And you're taking that moment. So that reflex, that stoic reflex, needs to be building in that space. So you can then decide, like what this, object is, whatever just happened. Is it an obstacle or an opportunity? Because it may be like, oh, wait, okay, never mind. We actually do want to keep going this way, right? Like at first it looked weird, but it looked wrong, but this is actually where we need to go. Or it's like, hey, let's stop this and let's look at where we need to go. That reflection, leaders either do reflection in the way of like no reflection at all. I hear this all the time of, this is how we've always done it, so this is how we're going to do it. To which I say, cool, you also used to shit in a diaper. I don't think you do that anymore, so maybe change is good. I always appreciate that one. And then the other reflection is the whole like, hey, okay, yeah, no, I see there's a problem. We're going to create a oversight committee to oversight this committee if we need to do a committee about this, right? Of like, let's just like leave this to die. And again, it's not about me. I'm going to make someone else solve it. Whereas for me, the reflection you need to take as a leader is vulnerable accountability. It's that saying like, hey, I recognize that this is on me. Wasn't necessarily my fault. Like Julie, you really screwed the pooch on this one. But like I am the leader. Is so. Oh, wait, you probably shouldn't say in the workplace.
Classic Julie.
Classic Julie. Screw the pooch is one of my favorite sayings, and I still hold true on that one. But I say like it's your job as a leader. So that reflection, that accountability is saying, hey, like I need a moment. Like I need to like I'm gonna think on this, like, and we're gonna come up with a plan. But the Stoic practice of premeditatio malorum is like the premeditation of evils. It's when you go through something as a leader, you've already thought through all the things that could go wrong, right? Yeah. So when that deer jumps in the road and you got to put your arm out and stop it, you are able to recognize, you're like, okay, that's this. We talked about this. So like, remember, this is our plan to deal with that. And you just get more practice. And then at some point, it's going to be a fucking zebra. And you didn't think about a zebra in front of the road, right? And so, but you've thought about everything else, and you're in that mindset of understanding that just because something hasn't gone as planned doesn't mean that we need to knee jerk and freak the fuck out.
Right, sure.
And so taking that approach to it, being really honest of, taking the time, because your reflection is not only internal, but it's what you're putting out there, right? A reflection is what other people are seeing. And leaders forget about that. And it doesn't have to be your a managerial position. You can be a front desk, secretary and be a leader, because you're also going to be dealing with obstacles all day long, and being able to identify if it's a opportunity. And if you can't find a way to make an opportunity, then you realize we don't always get our rathers, and you make the most of it. So that's my approach to that one.
There you go, Becky. Mm-hmm. It's awesome that you've been able to work with a number of different clients and do that work with them. That I'm sure sometimes it's hard to eat your own words. It's hard to be like, crap, we are doing that, or we are stuck in a rut, or we have been, we're in this pattern where we keep saying this, yeah, it's hard to get people to realize that sometimes they have to kill their darlings or whatever it is, that thing that they really held true. We're like, well, no, this is the way we've got here, and this is what's going to keep us. Whatever this is what the customer wants, or this is what the client needs, or and and just how do we get people out of their own way to actually make the choices they need to make, the hard choices they need to make sometimes to be able to serve the right people, and so in the best way possible.
There's always somebody benefiting from the inefficiencies, is what I recognize. And I just had to send out a hard email this last week to somebody who, basically saying like, hey, like I realized that one of the people who hired me to come in is the person that's standing in the way of these changes happening. And I just said, I was like, I don't want to waste your time and money. And it's just like, you got to make a decision.
Yeah.
Like, I get like, you gotta be willing to go all in. And that's one of the things I've been very clear on, is like, kind of like, again, like integrity always gets in my way, because I should just like keep taking their money and like, but I don't want to. I want results. And so looking at the fact of who's benefiting from things not running well, because somebody is.
Yeah. I love it.
Yeah.
Becky, I appreciate you for hanging out and kicking it in the diner with me, dropping some knowledge, telling us about your past, talking to us about Stoicism and how it applies both to life, and trying to help me get out of my own way, trying to let these feelings not control me. And so I appreciate your ability to teach, laugh, and tell stories at the same time. It really is. It's a ton of fun. You have a true gift, and I'm proud to call you a friend, and really excited that you wanted to come to the diner today, friend.
I'm happy it worked out. I appreciate you. You rescheduling. We were supposed to do it last week, but Santa came, and I appreciate you recognizing that Santa beats you.
You can't. The last thing I need is coal in this stocking. You know what I mean?
No. You are very funny, and I'm excited. My 11-year-old listens to your podcast as well, and she thinks you're very funny. So.
Well, awesome. I hope she thinks you're a big deal, because now you're on it. And if she doesn't, then she's right. But
true point. Very, very true. That's why I said nothing. So I'm like, the writing's on the wall. This is a wonderful podcast, and man, you have guests that just blow my socks off my feet, because they're really good. So I'm proud of you, kid.
Thanks, homie. I appreciate it. And added another one to the list today. Becky, thank you so much. How can people stay in touch with you, Becky? What can people do if they want to learn more about the consulting, or if they want to learn more about what you're doing in Becky's Mindful Kitchen, or some of the parenting workshops you do, stuff like that?
No, fantastic question. I prefer carrier pigeon for all communications.
Perfect. Okay.
Yep. And if that doesn't work for you, then my website, so easy. It's just beckysmindfulkitchen.com, or Facebook or Instagram, Becky's Mindful Kitchen. It's very easy. It's very simple.
Branding's important.
It is. Yeah, I know. Luckily, there's not many Becky's with Mindful Kitchens out there. So it worked out. But yeah, you can message me there, and I do respond to every message.
Love it. Becky, thank you so much for coming through and kicking it in the diner. I look forward to our paths crossing in real life at some point.
Definitely. We'll see. Hopefully not just at your funeral.
Yay.
End it dark.
End it dark. Build a goat factory in my honor. All right. You take care, Becky.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Y'all, that was my time with Becky Schmooke. She is an incredible human being with just been through some stuff, y'all. As she mentioned, she talked about having bulimia, type 1 diabetes, almost near death experiences. She's also she's got a husband who's an incredible man and a firefighter, a fire chief at that, and she also runs this farm with a bunch of goats running around. She's going to take up falconry for fun. She's teaching archery because it's a way to teach stoicism. Just a lot of really cool layers in this episode. I hope that you all enjoyed it, and I hope that you all could try to do the same work that I'm trying to do. I'm trying to separate yourself from some of those outcomes. I'm trying to control what you control and let go of what you cannot. Just sounds easier, sounds lovely, sounds lighter, and I think we deserve that. Well, while we still attack that small journey, my friends, until next time, let me remind you to keep punching small talk in the face by asking better questions. You all